Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Mike.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week we'll be reviewing The Post.
Boy, I'm sure glad we don't live in a time where the president's trying to control the press, huh?
Hey everyone, and welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? Featuring two guys getting blasted and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And thank you to Shaquan Baker on Facebook for that synonym suggestion. You can find more of Shaquan's trademark wit on our Snowden episodes and our Kong Skull Island episode. But let us delay no further. Betwixt us, for the third time on this podcast, our old friend Lindsey Daly.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back.
Thanks for coming back on.
Hey,
you might recognize that seductive voice from Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, Everybody Wants Some, or the Loving episode of our podcast. And Lindsey, you are a blogger for thedailystruggle.com. How is the Daily Struggle going?
It's been a little bit of a struggle to find time to write new content. My last story was about why 2017 was a weird year. It was hard to narrow it down to only 10 things as to why it was a weird year, but it did pretty well. And then I actually tried something new recently. A friend of mine, she wrote an article for the first time and sent it to me so I could look it over. She wanted to know if it was like good enough to be shared, which I thought was a compliment that she would ask me to look at it. So I said, hey, I'll put it on the Daily Struggle and you can share it with people. So I added a little guest writers tab.
Nice.
And so anybody who has work that they want to share, I'm willing to read it and post it.
Submit to the struggle.
It's not going to get like that many views, but
Right.
Get some exposure.
No, I wasn't saying right to... Yeah, it's not going to get that many views. No, but that's really cool. It's a really cool idea.
So what was that article about that she sent in?
Well, she has a disdain for the like Amazon Echo, Alexa, and her name is Alexa. So she gets a lot of like bad small talk about having the same name as the Alexa. And
funny.
She just thinks the whole concept of it is like completely unnecessary to anyone's life. So she wrote, it was called like My Thoughts on the Fake Alexa by the Real Alexa. So it was funny, and like she's new at writing, so I figured she's not gonna like make a whole website for herself right off the bat. So I was like, I'll give you a link that you could share with people.
Took her under your blogging wing.
Yeah, and it's hard to keep up with when I'm at like teaching during the year, so I figured get some new content on there. So
there you go. And then you have your latest article was the 10 reasons why 2017 was a weird year.
Yes.
Which we just talked for like an hour before we started recording about many of those reasons.
I think I mentioned the sexual harassment part in the article, but did not make any jokes about it because it's not funny. So I saved the jokes for things like that weird kid Keaton that the video went viral and then everyone hated him within 24 hours because that was just bizarre.
That was weird, yeah.
That was really odd.
There was like a tweet about that, like after that Keaton thing went, where they were talking about like they're basically making fun of how we always find these people that were like, oh, they're so great, like Ken Bone, or like Buster Keaton or Keaton, whatever his name was, and then we find out that like either they come from like a very racist family or they've shared some unfavorable stuff about women online. So someone had a tweet that was like, look, it's like Milkshake Duck, the duck who drinks milkshakes. And then like the next tweet is something about like it being accused of sexual harassment or something. And then that ended up becoming like a word of the year was Milkshake Duck and like one of those like dictionary sites or something.
Wait, did we find out bad things about Ken Bone?
Yeah, he is like a Reddit user who was like, I think it had something to do with like when that like big leak of like all the celebrity nudes. It was something with Jennifer Lawrence, right?
The fappening.
The fappening.
Yeah. That's what it was,
right? I hate
right?
that I know that.
Yeah, he was, he just, I mean, we just got to see what his Reddit history was. And yeah, I don't know. He just said something off color about Jennifer Lawrence's nude pictures. He talked about just like tax evasion that he's done and like just like strange little things that people are like, oh, maybe he's not like this little precious naive kind of guy.
Well, because we only decided he was because he wore a bad sweater to a town hall and looked like a Guess Who character.
Yeah, he
like
did, yeah.
It just.
I mean, we should have known because he was undecided at a town hall between Trump and Hillary Clinton.
But we just decide that we love these people for no reason, and then we're shocked that they're not perfect people.
That's one of like my like still to the like people who still to this day on Facebook are like, I don't want to get political or anything, but people are like, man, now we gotta choose between the Patriots and the Eagles, like playing at the Super Bowl. This is almost as bad as when we had to choose between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Kind of, it was just kind of like, shut up. Do you know the bullet we could have dodged with Hillary Clinton?
I know.
Like,
it could have been so easy.
Oh my God. Like, but what about her emails? But what about them? I miss
those emails.
Yeah, those were
so bad.
Bring the emails back. That was a great scandal compared to everything we're dealing with now.
Yeah.
In 2018, even 2 years in. But let's drink. Let's drink in honor of all the horrible things that happened in 2017. We're drinking North Coast Cabernet Sauvignon. I do not know how to pronounce that. So
it sounded legit to me.
Sauvignon.
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 I don't know if this has.
I think my biggest internet success of 2017 ended up being that Paul's mom snap video that I made. That was like a random thing I did when I was losing my mind on a Sunday night, and then it like got kind of popular.
Is there somewhere where people listening can find that?
It's public on my Facebook, so you can go to my Facebook, and that's the only thing that people can see.
It's pretty funny.
Because at first it was private. You know, as a teacher, I'm always scared of like, you know, parents.
Especially when you're mocking a student's
parent.
Yeah,
well, it's a fictional character.
It's
based on true events, but it was private. And then my principal actually, she came up to me at school and she's like, I just got off the phone with Paul's mom and like winked at me, you know. But she was like, "It's hilarious. I'll support you if anyone has anything to say about it." And I was like, "Awesome!"
Wow. Yeah.
So she's like, "Make it public. Who cares?"
Yeah.
So
that's funny.
She's the one who can fire me or not. So I'm like, "Well, she says it's okay."
Right.
So,
yeah.
And I've gotten like random older guys from other states who have messaged me these like long things about how funny it was and true. They're like retired principals.
Oh, okay. That's funny.
Yeah.
Wait, did it go big on Facebook or on?
Yeah. Facebook. It got like almost 4,000 views and like a bunch of people shared it. So.
Oh, damn.
Maybe we'll share it on the
oh my God.
our
so
Facebook.
Cool.
Before we post this
Hashtag
episode.
get Lindsey fired.
Yeah. Just so if people want to see it,
job.
we can show it to them via our Facebook.
Yeah, I've been waiting for the filter to come back. I got some new material and it has not been back since.
You got to do that because I know like we had
it's like what's his name? Yeah.
Sean Mason on who had the light screen go viral video a while ago, but it was based on that filter that like removes your nose and makes your mouth big with the big eyes and whatever.
Okay.
And he would, like, when he had that filter, he wouldn't update Snapchat after that, just in case they were going to remove it in an update. So just anytime a Snapchat update would come through, he would reject it.
Yeah.
If it's possible, so that he could keep that, because that was his claim to fame, was the video. He had to keep going with it. So.
Oh yeah, I need to check.
When it comes back, don't update Snapchat ever again.
I didn't know that had anything to do with it. The updates, because sometimes they come in and out, like the different filters. Like they'll go away and they'll come back. So I check every day, but it hasn't been back in over a month.
How do we feel about this wine?
Let's see.
It tastes like every other red wine I've had in my life.
We don't know enough to talk about beer. We know less about wine.
Yeah, no, I know even less. I'm not like a wine.
Compared to other reds I've had, I like this one better.
It's good. I don't even really know what. Yeah, I don't even know.
It's a little less sweeter than. It's also a little less bitter than. It's like smoother than most red wines. That's about as far as I can go.
Yeah, I was about to say I don't
discussion of this wine.
Know how to critique a wine really.
I think
color
you
is
you
red.
swirl it in your glass, smell it. and then drink it.
Smells like wine.
But big development. You guys know it's a big time of the year for us. If you haven't already seen, go to our Facebook, Twitter, anywhere, really, YouTube preferably, to see our handy nominations. And Mike, what are the
We're
handies?
back, baby.
Yes. Baby, we're back.
The handies are our annual film awards ceremony. It's the biggest, most prestigious awards ceremony in all time, especially this year. But we give
Even
out...
bigger than the fake news awards.
Yes.
Yes. But we do our own little kind of satire of the Oscars, but they're actually also
they're real
a
awards.
legit
The
award.
awards are voted on
Yeah.
seriously, but we have a lot of fun with the ceremony and the nominations video. We thought it's pretty funny, so go check it out. And you can find all the nominations there. You can also find it. We have the nominations posted on our website, howmanyfingerspodcast.com.
Also, you guys decide who wins.
And that's the thing, we nominated the film, but you guys get to vote on them. And you can do that by using hashtag #GiveAHandy2, followed by the handy recipient and the category that they're in. So maybe, the post wasn't nominated, but if it was, hashtag #GiveAHandy2, the post, best picture, so on and so forth. So definitely get your votes in. And the ceremony is going to be on Friday, March 2nd. We'll post that. And then voting is going to be open until Monday, February 19th. Mm-hmm. So get your votes in before then.
It's a nice way to close out the year, celebrate all the episodes that we've done, because they're only out of the films that we've reviewed this year.
Yes, and there's podcast episode or podcast awards as well.
Oh, yeah.
This will be eligible for next year's.
Oh.
But
so next year's handies.
let's
you
make
can
it a
vote.
winner.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't win last time.
But on your
Got to
favorite,
campaign harder.
It was an honor to be nominated.
but on your favorite, again, episode and host and guest.
Definitely vote on the host.
Yes, the host.
For hashtag #GiveAHandy2 Mike King, best host.
Or joking.
Joking.
He doesn't work here, but you might appreciate the handy.
We're going to ignore those votes. Let me read this IMDb description, and then Joe's going to hit you with some Joe notes about the post. You're giving me a look like you have Joe notes, right?
Oh, God, this was no. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I was just respectfully not talking for you to read the IMDb description.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
Mike and I both stared at each other, desperate to say a joke. I
like
assume
the third
neither of us
wheel.
could think of something. Yeah.
A cover-up that spanned 4 U.S. presidents pushed the country's first female newspaper publisher and a hard-driving editor to join an unprecedented battle between the press and the government.
Wow.
That's the post.
That is the post. So the post was directed by Steven Spielberg. If you guys want to hear about Steven Spielberg's extensive film history, maybe you haven't heard of this up-and-coming director. Yeah. According to IMDb, that's up on my laptop right now, he's just known for AI, Artificial Intelligence, Minority Report, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Jurassic Park. His 4 biggest films.
2 out of 4.
But yeah.
I have a cousin named Steven Spielberg. I just want to throw that out there.
Really?
Yeah.
Does he make films?
No, he doesn't.
You would think even just with that name, you'd be like, I should try my hand at film.
Yeah, the only relation is back in the day when people used phone books. He would get a lot of calls from people who thought he was the director, Steven Spielberg, living out on Long Island.
It's like 3 a.m. The phone's ringing off the hook. I love your movies. Stop calling me.
That's about it.
I just finished AI, Artificial Intelligence.
Your best movie yet. Next up, Minority Report.
Followed by Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and then followed by Jurassic Park. The 4th most well-known after those 3. Yeah, but if you do want to, I think I had pretty extensive notes on Steven Spielberg when we reviewed his other film, or his film before this. No, not even his film before this, but the last film that we reviewed by him.
For this BFG.
Bridge of Spies. Yeah, that's true. But a joke that we were talking about on there, History Dad is back. He's tackling the Pentagon Papers this time. He was also doing the Cold War. He's reviewing Lincoln. He's doing World War I horse.
World War I horse.
He was doing the BFG a huge part of.
Also, you can check out
World history.
the Spielberg documentary on HBO for a very extensive history of who this man is.
So the post was written by Liz Hannah and Josh Singer. The post was actually... This story makes me want to blow my brains out. The post was actually a spec script written by Liz Hannah, who was hoping to entice an agent to sign her. She was later contacted by Amy Pascal, telling Hannah that she wanted to produce the post, and then she just became increasingly more lucky as Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep became attached to her first screenplay. Fuck you, Liz Hannah. Congratulations, though. Josh Singer, on the other hand, has written The Fifth Estate, Spotlight, and several episodes of The West Wing. The Post received 2 nominations for the upcoming 90th Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Actress for Meryl Streep. John Williams composed the Post score. Originally, he was attached to write music for Spielberg's Ready Player One, which comes out in a few months, a month or two. When does that come out? Soon.
Too soon. No
yeah.
interest.
But yeah, due to both films having a similar post-production schedule, Williams chose to work on The Post, and Alan Silvestri is composing the score to Ready Player One. So I feel like that kind of speaks volumes about Ready Player One.
I'll pass.
John Williams is like,
No, thank you.
what's the other one with Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep? I feel like, should I do that one? Yeah, no, the Ready Player One. I don't think that looks. Doesn't look great.
There's a certain sect of people who are excited for it.
Yeah, I've heard like a lot of people come out more recently and be like, the book's like not good. Like I don't know. I've always heard.
I can't imagine I see it working sort of in a movie because it's like Easter egg. I know that character. I know that song.
Right.
I don't know how it works in a book. Like, how do you describe the Iron Giant and like video game characters?
I don't really know. Is the Iron
like is every time they show up, is it just like, oh, it's Master Chief from Halo, or like
I don't know. Is that a
like visually you don't have to like do that kind of like setup that you do in a book.
But is that a development from Steven Spielberg? I don't know really anything about the book. I didn't know if the Iron Giant was in or any of those,
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, I know it is like a pop culture, like
right. Yeah,
I don't know what the word is, amalgam or just a bunch of pop culture shoved into one thing in the book. So there's got to be some Easter eggs in there.
Yeah. So that pretty much concludes my Joe notes.
The only thing I had is just some of the other awards that it was nominated for. It was the Oscars, as you mentioned, Best Picture, Best Actress. At the Critics' Choice, it was nominated for Best Acting Ensemble, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, Best Editing, Best Original Screenplay, Best Picture, and Best Score. At the Golden Globes, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, Best Motion Picture, Best Original Score, Best Screenplay, and at the Producers Guild Awards, Best Theatrical Motion Picture. But then it was snubbed by the Screen Actors Guild, the Writers Guild, the Editors Guild. And I was reading about how they sent out like copies of the movie really late to all those guilds, specifically the Screen Actors Guild. So I feel like it might have gotten nominated better if they weren't like rushing to get it in for Oscar season. Like I feel like he was making Ready Player One and then was like, oh, well, I can make The Post too this year and get it out for Oscar time. And they might have rushed it a little bit in terms of maybe the release of it.
Well, I mean, he's got so many balls in the air. There's a project, The Kidnapping of Edgardo Mortara. Those words mean nothing to me.
Yeah, I have no idea.
But I was reading that that was supposed to come out before either of these movies, the Ready Player One or The Post or whatever, and then he ran into some sort of casting debacle, and also I guess maybe he read the screenplay for The Post, and he was like, that seems relevant and important. Like I should do that before I do something else. I don't even think it's rumored anymore. He's going to remake West Side Story, which is kind of exciting. He's never done a musical before.
Yeah.
I like West Side Story. I don't know if I'll like it by Steven Spielberg, but again, like Ready Player One's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a spectacle.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna be a good movie. And then obviously he's also got some sort of untitled Indiana Jones project up in the air that he has to like legally do before like 2020 or Disney will.
The West Side Story thing is
something.
interesting because it's like the post is like, it's Oscar bait from like the traditional angle of like history, period piece, Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, John Williams, Steven Spielberg. Like it's made to be nominated for Oscars. Didn't fully work out. They got Best Picture and Best Actress and that's it. But then to do West Side Story, that's kind of like almost like a newer angle at like Oscar bait, just because like musicals tend to get nominated when they're done well. Or like you look at like La La Land that like comes away with like 11 or 12 nominations, or was it 14? It was a lot of nominations last year for La La Land.
Yeah.
I forget how many it was.
Or just musicals. Yeah, they do well at
because you're almost like
Oscars,
guaranteed to win like the Golden Globe for musical or comedy. So you're gonna get that at least, and then you're gonna get in for original score. You're gonna get in for best song, stuff like that. It's just like automatic Oscars for certain aspects of like a musical.
Yeah, there's no year attached to that right now, but that's gonna be. I can't see that not dominating the Oscars. Again, because it's Steven Spielberg. I'm sure we'll have a phenomenal cast attached to it. Just like reading this about this cast of the post, was it just like it didn't seem real, kind of like months and months ago when we were reading about this. So let's get into the. Let's get right into the post.
So, I mean, we can start off right at the beginning just with that sort of like Vietnam sequence in the beginning, which like I'm not really a fan of in this movie.
I was about to say, but before that, just really quick, I just feel like there's not going to be really like spoilers. There's going to be no spoiler section.
It is a history movie.
Just a heads up, just because the plot is literally American history. If you want, you can pause this episode right now and go visit
back to school.
Or read like the Wikipedia entry on like the Pentagon Papers. You'll probably come back to the episode knowing.
Spoiler alert: the Washington Post is still a paper.
Yeah. You'll probably come back knowing more about these events than Mike and I, as many of our listeners and friends have pointed out. Mike and I don't know a whole lot about history.
That's why we've got a history teacher with us.
I actually, though, went into this movie like not knowing all the information myself. So we don't really cover that in middle school history. It's usually like high school curriculum. About how our government is corrupt and terrible.
Yeah, but let's talk about that Vietnam scene, which I was not a fan of either.
Yeah, just like, I mean, like two things. Like, one, it makes me want Steven Spielberg to go back to doing actual war movies and do an actual Vietnam War movie. Because I think it is...
To do it right.
Yeah, because I think it's well shot, but you can tell that it was not the top of their list. Like, it doesn't really totally convince me that it's Vietnam. It feels like it's shot on a soundstage.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
And like, that's whatever. It's like sort of a small scene, but I also don't think it accomplishes anything for this movie. And that's maybe the bigger problem for me, is that like, it's a detriment for me because we're taking so long to get into meeting the actual characters and players of this movie. Like, Daniel Ellsberg is a character in that like the plot sort of is based around him, but like we don't need to get to know him as a person really for this movie to make sense, I don't think. Because half of the characters in this movie don't meet him. Like, Bob Odenkirk's character is the only one that really has any interaction with him, and he's kind of just behind the scenes. It's like 10 to 15 minutes of just like all this stuff going on.
I was about to say, it's a weird amount of time to be...
Like, the actual Vietnam sequence is... Get rid of that. Like, we don't really need that to understand why the Vietnam War was like flawed. Like, you know, you can have that in like his reporting sequence. And then just the whole, like, him with, like, the scene with him and McNamara, and then showing, like, McNamara kind of, like, lying about everything. Like, I get that it sort of makes sense to the plot, and maybe it is necessary in that right, but it still just takes us, like, 15 minutes before we see Tom Hanks or Meryl Streep, like, the people that we're supposed to care about, and to be the protagonist of this movie. And there are also two characters in this movie that I feel like they're a little bit underdeveloped, maybe, and I wish we could have just gotten to them sooner, and... gotten some of this out of the way.
Yeah, I agree.
See, I actually would disagree.
Okay.
I agree that this scene did feel a little bit like soundstagey. It almost gave me like Tropic Thunder vibes.
It was very, yeah.
But I think that for most people seeing this movie who don't know the extent to what happened in history, kind of need that visual. And to recognize the character Daniel, like later on in the film, I think it was kind of necessary to see that he's the one who's going to end up leaking this information. Like, I thought that for a history film, it was very easy to follow and understand, because some movies, they leave bits out assuming that you'll like fill in the blanks yourself, and not everybody can do that. Or when there are characters that all kind of look similar, like actors, it can be hard to follow. So I didn't mind that
I just wonder
intro.
if there's a better way to organize the movie, or something else they could have put first.
Yeah,
and again, I can't really come up with a solution for that. It just feels like an unfortunate side effect of the story they were trying to tell, where you have this 15-minute sequence where the main character for this is someone that we're not going to see but once for the rest of the movie.
This whole story in itself is a bit problematic as a movie, kind of. Like, immediately after watching it, I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, I feel like this maybe should have been like a mini series or something. Like, it was too much to accomplish in one movie. It was just kind of, we didn't really see, I mean, I'll get into it later, but we don't really see the process. We just kind of, I mean, it's really kind of, this movie is just characters get Pentagon papers. Characters read Pentagon papers. Characters realize that the Pentagon papers are the Pentagon papers. Characters decide whether they should post the Pentagon papers, and then, like, lady decides that they should post the Pentagon papers. And it's just really, like, that's it? Like, that's the movie, kind of? Like, we don't... And that's the thing, like, I love, like... I do like movies like this. I do like politics, history... process, inner workings of smart people doing their jobs very well. I feel like on paper I should love this movie, but it just feels underwhelming as a film. It's just like a movie about one decision, and we already know how that decision's gonna go, and like that just is not particularly interesting to me, honestly.
I feel like it was something that should have been framed more as like a character study.
Yeah.
And I think the character would be Katharine Graham to study, and to maybe give Meryl Streep a bigger role in this movie, and not make it this, like, make Tom Hanks an actual supporting actor rather than like just like a co-actor in this sort of whatever, because I do love Tom Hanks' performance in this, but I think Meryl Streep is the better actor in this character. I think she brings a lot more of the emotion to this movie. And I think because I've heard people who have said that there's been criticism of this movie for saying that they think it's historically inaccurate, in the sense that, like, they don't actually lie about anything in this movie, but like the New York Times are really the heroes of this whole story, in terms of they're the ones that got the Pentagon Papers, they published it, they're the ones that went to the Supreme Court with this case, and like, just because they had a court injunction against them and took their time doesn't mean that, like, the Washington Post were these more heroic people in this case.
Right, yeah.
They almost got lucky in the sense that the New York Times was like the one getting in trouble, so they could sneak under and print it.
And I agree with that, but I think my defense would be that I think in this movie it is more about, it's kind of viewing it through Katharine Graham's eyes, and I think the bigger story in here is that, like, she was this woman who sort of inherited this position and everyone doubted her. And I think the movie is more about her transformation, where, like, in the beginning, like, she's doubting herself all the time. And, like, she doesn't even speak up at the board meeting. Or you have, like, the breakfast with Tom Hanks, which I do love. And that's why I wish that had been earlier in the movie, because it's such like it's a great, like, meeting of, like, two of the greatest actors of our generation, and they both pull it off really well.
Right.
But the one scene where she tries to give him, like, advice about, like, what to publish, and he kind of snaps at her, and he's like, "Don't you point your, like, finger in my face," or I forget how he says it, but he, like, really snaps.
"Don't you stick your finger in my eye."
Yeah, and he's snapping at his boss, and she kind of recoils, and it's like, no, you're right. Like I shouldn't like.
Yeah.
I wouldn't dare to tell you how to like edit this paper. And that's kind of there's great character progression in that where we see that in the beginning, but then at the end she's the one who's kind of like all the men are sort besides Tom Hanks are telling her don't publish, and she's like fuck it, like we got to publish, like this is the right decision. So I think we should have had maybe more of a focus on that and less of a focus on like the Washington Post is this big momentous player in this story. Maybe told it more through the lens of they got really lucky and they were kind of riding off the heels of what the New York Times was doing. But the bigger point is that Katharine Graham had this kind of transformation through this story.
Right. And I do think there are more interesting things happening at the Times at this point. I mean, it's just when you're the first people to come into contact with these papers, my God, what's that fucking like? Like, are you going to destroy your company or are you going to destroy America? And the nightmares every night that come with that, you know, you have so much on your shoulders where it's just kind of the Post is like, you know, everybody's got a little part of this, you know, and it's just, and granted, it's still a momentous sort of decision, but I do think the Times would, I like this film, but I do think there needs to be something said about like the Times kind of
and
role
they do sort of put it in perspective at the end of this movie when they're like they're following your lead,
right.
Like because this small paper decided to go forward even while the Times was in their injunction, that all these other papers decided to publish too, and then they all end up going to the court.
I also wanted to know, like, when you just said it could have been like a mini series or something, like how did they have such close ties to like Jack Kennedy and Lyndon B. Johnson? Like they were all like buddies, and that's something that like I would have wanted to know more about that.
Right. Yeah, it is.
And like why did her husband kill himself?
Yeah. There's so many like really like intriguing things that are happening in this film, kind of like, oh wow, the press used to be like really cozy with like politicians and everything, where it is like Meryl Streep or Kay Graham has a fucking like political like gathering in like her backyard essentially.
It almost feels like she's so in bed with all of them that like before this point nothing bad was getting published.
Right.
I don't know, I just thought that was an interesting part of the movie that went really glazed over.
I think they did pay some, because I think that was the big conflict for Kay was
definitely
whether to publish, because it is her dear friend Robert McNamara, and that's why I think my other favorite scene in the movie is when Ben Bradley comes to meet her and he kind of sits down on the couch and he talks about like, you know, when John F. Kennedy got shot, like I was there and I could see the blood like on like Jackie Kennedy's like dress, and we didn't publish that back then, like because it wouldn't have been right. And I think the conflict of like, you know, living in Washington, being a political paper while also being like cozy with all these politicians was handled pretty well in this movie. I still don't know. I don't know if I could really see this being a mini series, because I almost felt like they were stretching things too far in this movie, like making more of a. It almost could have been like a shorter movie, I thought.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some...
I guess unless they dove deeper, and again, like if they made it more of a character study and less of a historical drama, then maybe we can draw it out. But like, you're right. It is kind of just like the Pentagon papers get sent to them. They read the papers. They realize what they are. They read them some more. They decide to post them. We don't have like any kind of scenes of like the writing process or like anything like that. Not that I really wanted them, but like... they were already stretching themselves pretty thin to make it as long as it was.
Yeah, it's a very... I mean, it's just... Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd want to see this... I don't know. That's just like what I thought of at the moment. I don't know if I'd want to see this as a series either. I don't know. Like, there are things I don't like about this movie that I don't know how I would fix. Again, this movie is... It could just be a shorter film, because this movie is so generalized and non-specific, you know? It's just kind of like... there is no insight to what they're doing besides kind of like fishing through papers in like Tom Hanks' living room. And there's, I don't know, they're just like really not big on process. And I feel like I keep saying process because like you don't have to, and it's kind of unfair to compare this, but like I just kept comparing it to Spotlight in my head.
I did too, yeah.
And Spotlight is this just, again, I still think it's a Five-Finger movie. It's this kind of just love letter to journalism.
Trademark Five-Finger movie.
Yes. But it's this love letter to journalism in the process, and I talked about that a lot during that review. Yeah, and this is just so different, and I was just kind of like, I don't really know what they're trying to do during this movie.
I mean, I guess it is, again, I think it's more focused on Katharine Graham, who's not a reporter or a writer, so it's more focused on the behind the scenes of...
It's her film.
Reporters can find the information and they can write it, but at the end of the day, there's someone who's saying go or don't go, and that was her decision to make.
It's just like, she was... another film that you can compare this to, which I compared to Spotlight when we were reviewing that, was like All the President's Men. And as I can imagine, Kay Graham is a huge part of that. And like, she's completely like not in that film, really. So it's nice to see this character in this film. I wish we spent more time with her, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just... it felt thin for a Spielberg movie. It felt not substantial at times.
It felt very...
like,
I read some criticism. I mean, I don't know if criticism is the right word, but
right.
Not praise for this movie in terms of he's kind of just doing the same things that he's always done and that he's been really good at. Like, it's just very classic filmmaking in this.
Oh, definitely.
In a time where, like, you need to kind of be pushing the envelope, especially if you're Steven Spielberg and you've got so many films under your belt. Like, you sort of need to start reinventing yourself at this point. Like, you've done, like, even like him doing like historical dramas is starting to get a little tired at this point.
History Dad needs to change the channel. My God. Yeah, it's, I mean, and maybe
or just do something like crazy and inventive. Like, there's some great cinematography in this movie, but it's just stuff we've seen before. Like the scene where they're like handing out, like showing the process of how the papers get delivered to everyone. Like, that's kind of interesting, but it's not really going to win any wars, and it's not really pushing the envelope in any way. And
right.
There's just nothing that's really groundbreaking about this movie, even if it is solid and entertaining, like I think it is. It's just like, it's hard to get like really passionate about this movie, like I could about a lot of other Steven Spielberg movies. And I feel like he's just gotten too comfortable, and I want to like feel movie magic again from Steven Spielberg.
It's also like what I was talking about before when he was like, oh man, like I have to make this movie now because this movie's relevant right now. And there was so many impactful points to make during this movie that were just never made. Like, I think why are you making it? Like,
it's almost too on the nose. Like, if you watch the Spielberg documentary, they do a really good job of analyzing how when he made Munich, what was on his mind was how we were kind of going after all the terrorists after 9/11, and it was like, well, at what cost is this worth it? Is violence for violence really the right answer? And in all the collateral damage that we're causing, is that really going to achieve the end that we're hoping? And that's really what Munich's about. But they don't have terrorists in Munich, and it has nothing to do with America in Munich. But you still sort of got the point because it focused on the bigger point rather than the specific point that he was trying to get across. Whereas I think this is too sort of on the nose, where it's like the presidency and the media, and that's directly what it's about. And that's it. We could have gotten maybe like a bigger, wider way of getting that point across that would have been more effective.
right.
Because it just feels like Steven Spielberg kind of saying "fuck you" to Donald Trump, like in movie form.
Yeah.
Yeah, some guy sitting behind me like was clearly very into those parallels in the movie. So something would be said about Nixon or like freedom of the press, and he'd be like, "Yeah," from like the back of the theater, which I just thought was funny because I think he expected more people to go in with like that mindset.
Right, guys?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but
I had some of that.
Though, I actually left feeling more bummed out. Like, I know you're supposed to be inspired by it, but if you look at things that have happened since then, because, like, it's this big triumphant, like, we published and we won the Supreme Court case and whatever, but we've still had presidents who completely lie about things and get away with it. And then now we have a president who... I don't want to politicize your podcast, but who makes the news the enemy. And so, like, back then I was just seeing how, like, if it's printed in the paper, like, it's true. And now people will see news and be like, Like, I don't know if I believe in that. And
Right.
it just, like, I feel like the integrity of the paper in the eyes of people has gone down so much. And in a way, it's deserved because everyone's competing to get the story out first. And they're not as meticulous as these, like, newspapers were. And they are printing fake news sometimes, or, like, you know, putting it on the internet just to get the story
Right.
out there first. So there are things online, like, we can't trust. But... Or, like, for instance, when all that Trump, like, there's a P tape or whatever came out. They didn't have the P tape. like, I feel like back in the 70s, if they got that tip, they weren't printing it unless they had evidence.
Right. Yeah.
And it just shows how, like, the press has gone downhill in a way.
Yeah.
Because it's like breaking news, there's a Trump-Russia prostitute P-tape, but we don't have it and don't know where it is. So it's
we
like...
haven't talked to anyone who actually knows it.
Exactly. So the movie almost kind of made me, like, upset because it just shows how news is so different now than it was then. There was, like, this integrity to it in the film that I thought was cool. And you could tell how, like, proud everybody was to work for the news and how seriously they
definitely.
took it.
Right.
And now it's like BuzzFeed broke the, like, Russian hooker story. Like,
BuzzFeed is actually doing some
click on a picture of a
legit journalism
puppy and
lately.
we'll tell
Yeah.
you which version of Trump you are. Like, I don't know. So
Well, they did that deep story on, like, Milo.
Yeah.
And kind of like all the emails that got released with Milo and superiors at Breitbart, and kind of just how Breitbart was intentionally cozying up to the alt-right. They did some pretty good journalism this year.
They have done. Yeah.
They also did a lot of numbered lists about stuff.
listicles.
They've done some tasty videos. Right? Is that Tasty's a product of
I think it's
BuzzFeed?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was also like I didn't like you were saying like about movie magic, and then also even within the content, I didn't get anything like deep or emotional from this movie really. I didn't. I wish it was more substantial. Is like
The
when I go into a
emotions
Spielberg
in this movie,
yeah.
I don't think come from the paper story. Like I think the most emotional scene is the scene between Meryl Streep and Alison Brie, when she's talking about like how strong Alison Brie was after their father's death, and how she had given her notes that she was allowed to read like at like the funeral when she was struggling to think of things to say, and like that really has nothing to do with like the actual paper story, and that's kind of just like good character writing, which is again why I feel like I wish they should have dug deeper into making this a character study of Katharine Graham in this movie.
Yeah.
There are a lot of details I like in this movie, though. Like, I really like the scene where something breaks on the news and they turn on the TV and they're all watching it. And it's just kind of, like, funny to see all the newspaper people watching news break on the TV. And then, like, at one point, Tom Hanks is like, all right, well, there's your article for the day. Like, go work on it. Like, I like details like that, kind of showing the transition from the paper being the number one source of news to now we can broadcast things the minute they come out. We don't have to wait for this 12 o'clock, like, print deadline to get things out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
I was impressed with how much everyone back then like trusted all of their colleagues. Like I feel like everyone now at their job is people that's like, oh, we would never like trust this person, and they were all just like passing off this extremely important report that was going to change all their lives. And I'm like, oh my god, they're just trusting that guy. Who is that guy? They're just giving him give him the folder, and they're all like just passing it off. Like whereas now in 2018. I feel like everyone has coworkers that like you wouldn't trust to do anything. I was like, wow, everyone actually did their job back then.
This is a pretty good ensemble cast though, which is why like I kind of wish they had maybe gotten their screener into the Screen Actors Guild earlier, because they could have been nominated for ensemble cast.
Yeah,
and it would have helped their chances for the Oscar, I think, in terms of optics.
It's more of like a very impressive. I mean, who's going to say no at this point to like you want to be in a Steven Spielberg movie? Like, you know,
That's what I was thinking about. Like, this has to just be people who are like, their agent has got some clout and they're like, oh, I can get you in a Spielberg movie. And they're like, I will be in that Spielberg movie.
Right, and it's to the point where it's even like some very like well-known actors have like 1 or 2 lines, and like that's it, kind of.
I feel like I recognize just about everybody in this movie.
Right,
like,
yeah.
It's to the point where like Sarah Paulson, who like just won a bunch of like Emmys and stuff for, I think she did, or Golden. What did she win? She won for
The OJ,
American Crime or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I think she won. She might have lost to Claire Foy.
She's just done some fantastic work.
Either way, yeah. Sarah Paulson is a pretty well-respected actress now, and she can afford to be in this movie for like a really pointless scene with Tom Hanks as his wife.
And like making them sandwiches.
Yeah, to have the trailer line of like, well, I think that's brave.
That's where some of this drama just gets straight up silly, is when it takes like a conversation with Ben's wife, like Tom Hanks, or like Sarah Paulson has to like go to Tom Hanks and be like, like Kay, like this, like she might have something at stake with like these papers being published, and he's like, oh, shit, you're right. Really? Was that the turning point? I was just like, this is the silliest fucking scene in this movie. Like, It was just kind of like, I took another woman point of view for me to see. Maybe her whole company's at stake. Like, it was just it was goofy.
I didn't like that because I kind of wanted him to be more of an asshole in this movie. Because I really love in that breakfast scene. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just because I've never really seen too much of Tom Hanks in the villainous role, or even semi-villainous. Not that he would be a villain in this, but he's definitely not the protagonist. It's true. Okay, never mind. Be the good guy all the time. But no, in that breakfast scene, like when he snaps at Kay,
yes.
like that's kind of like almost like a scene I feel like I've never seen of Tom Hanks, and that's what that scene is a big part of me really enjoying his performance in this movie, and like almost feel like he was a little snubbed by not getting recognized at the Oscars. Maybe it has something to do with him. Is he a supporting actor? Is he the featured actor in this movie? Mm-hmm. But I kind of wanted more of that, and I feel like they sort of toned it down and almost made us sympathize with him by like having that scene with his wife to be like, yeah, you're right. Like, I guess women are cool too, or whatever. Like, I kind of wanted him to be this like asshole bulldog that all he wanted to do was to publish the story because he thought it was the right thing for publishing and whatnot. But he was also a necessary tool of a greater good. And I think that's more interesting than like, well, they're all really noble, good people that did the right thing.
Yeah, this movie to me this movie was better than I thought it was going to be. From me standing looking at the trailer being like, just all like those lines piled on top of each other, where it was just kind of Meryl Streep. You don't get to see like the character that she actually is, and kind of like, oh, like I'm kind of playing this role as a socialite, and I'm kind of in bed with these politicians, and I'm not really the strong person that I am in like the trailer, because I'm taking over this paper under unfortunate consequence or unfortunate happenings or whatever. But like the trailer lines they show like zero struggle, really. It just kind of shows like a bunch of like proud people, or it's kind of like, sir, isn't that breaking the law? What do you think it is that we do here? Like, it's just like fucking like, yeah, okay. Like, I would have liked to see like some sort of presented contact in like, or conflict, not contact, in this movie, like through the trailer. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of see a little bit of it in the movie, but still, there's a lot of like, there was a lot of like human conflict, emotion that I still desired after seeing this movie. I don't know.
And they could have accomplished that by having it be a conflict between Ben Bradley and Katharine Graham, rather than we're sort of at odds in the beginning, but then we're on the same page about this one issue. Where like, if they had a conflict before that, they didn't really establish it, other than that one little snap at breakfast.
Mm-hmm. It is but I understand what you're saying about Tom Hanks. Like, how many times do we have to see Tom Hanks be the guy who saves America? Yeah. Like I'm fucking sick of it, kind of.
And he's good, but yeah, it was very interesting to me, just that one little line.
Oh, definitely. I was
like,
right.
Ooh, Daddy, like give me more of that, Daddy Hanks.
He's a great actor. Like,
Hit me, Tom
let's see
Hanks.
him. Let's see him be somebody that you kind of let's see a more three-dimensional character. Honestly, you know, it's just I don't know. It's just it reminded me of kind of like it was a little better, but it was kind of like watching like Sully, or it's just kind of like Tom Hanks plays like this character. He's like, I don't know, I did everything right, like that. You know, the worst thing happened, and I did everything right. So hopefully, I don't know, things will work out. Oh, hey, they worked out. All right then.
But I almost thought when he went to Kay's house to say, like, listen, I understand that, like, you have a lot at stake, and I'm pushing you to do something without thinking about that. He didn't. It didn't come off like super genuine to me. I feel like he did it because his wife kind of guilted him into just saying that. But the minute she was like, let's publish it, he's like, hell yeah. Like, he wasn't like, are you sure? It was just like, I don't know. So I don't think he ever ended up being super likable in the movie. Like, I didn't like his character very much.
No, but I think they
But he had America's best interest, you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
how did, like, he's... Yeah, I mean, maybe
the more
he's
interesting
not-
story is Tom Hanks as the bulldog who's like, well, this is what's best for the paper.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, this is what's best for America, justice and freedom. And
Or this is what journalism is about. It's
Yeah.
about, you know, it's about sending, you know, the journalist that the White House, like, barred from, like, this wedding, like, fuck it, send her in. Like,
Yeah.
send her in again, you know? Like, let's really, you know, this is what journalism's about. We push their buttons, you know, and then we report on it. I don't know.
how good is Bob Odenkirk in this movie?
He's really great.
Like,
I
I haven't watched Better Call Saul yet. I mean, he was great in Breaking Bad, and I've heard he's great in Better Call Saul. I can't bring myself to watch it because I loved Breaking Bad so much, and I just hate the fact that they made Better
Yeah.
Call Saul to begin with.
I'm just uninterested.
One day,
Yeah.
I'll watch it. But I think he's great in this. Like, he's just turned into such a great dramatic actor where, like, he's got some comedic lines. It's also really interesting to see him and David Cross.
Oh, it's
scenes
a Mr. Show reunion.
they got-
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
It was pretty funny. I was listening to the director's cut about this, and like they were saying that people on set were saying that to Steven Spielberg. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I had no idea. I don't know what that is.
Funny, yeah.
I made fucking Jaws. I don't watch Mr. Show." But yeah, I thought he did a good job of sort of like, I really like the scene that he has with Daniel Ellsberg in the hotel room where they're kind of talking about, like, you know, well, wouldn't you go to jail for this? Like,
Right.
what do you think you're, like, about to do here? Like, I think they show a lot of, like, internal conflict without actually, like, saying it out loud in that scene, in Bob Odenkirk's face, which I think is pretty good. I also think Michael Stuhlbarg's pretty good in this too, and he's been in fucking 3 Best Picture nominees this year.
Yeah.
In this, Call Me by Your Name, and Shape of Water,
And he has
all in
great
supporting roles.
performances in all of them.
He's quickly turning into, like, one of my, like, favorite actors of this
Who did he
generation.
play?
He's the New York Times owner, I guess. He's
Oh,
not the editor.
Okay.
The
He,
guy
like,
who
comes looking for the one guy in the restaurant.
he's the guy in the restaurant. He's the one who has
Oh,
dinner
okay.
with
Rosenthal
Kay Graham.
or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
a something
Gotcha.
Rosenthal.
Yeah.
And it's like a small role, but he's like perfect in it, just like he was in Shape of Water, and how amazing he is in Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah, this is definitely his smallest role out of
Yeah.
those 3, but it's still, nonetheless, it's good.
He did get nominated for it was like Detroit or something Film Critics Circle for his role in this. So
Wow.
somebody recognized it.
Wow, yeah. I mean, there's so
I think it was
many
I think
supporting
but I think
characters.
but
in
I
this.
think
Yeah.
it was one of those roles where, like, they nominated him, but it was like shared with Shape of Water and Call Me by Your Name. Like, they were
That's
just
fair.
like,
Yeah.
this year Michael Stuhlbarg was good in
He's
supporting
been doing
roles.
it, yeah. Hmm.
He's very prolific.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. There's a lot of strong performances in here. I can't penalize anybody's performance. They're all great. They're all just working with the material that they have. And I think if anything's problematic within this film, it's the story. It's the script is even good. It's just kind
It's
of
great
like
at times, yeah.
it's just kind of like the story that's presented. I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't know. Like, there has to be some other angle that you guys could have approached this at.
Like, I enjoyed it, and I wasn't bored by any part of the movie. Like, I was engaged the whole time, but I couldn't help but laugh a little bit at the seriousness because like in most historical movies the big thing is like we're going to war, like something crazy, and this is like published the paper and everyone's like, yeah, we're gonna publish this story. Like when that is the most exciting thing that happens in a historical story, I think it's hard to focus an entire film around it. Like we're publishing a story. That's the huge like part of the movie.
I don't know
They
what
did
gets
do a good
me.
job with that though, just because like I did
built-
really like the scene where they're in Ben Bradley's house, and like I like the
I
little
enjoyed it,
like side story of like his daughter making lemonade, and then she's making like bucks on bucks on bucks, selling them because they're in his house and they're eating sandwiches, and it's just like papers laid all over his like living room. Like
I love
kind of
that
like
shit,
that.
yeah.
I like that sort of like guerrilla journalism where it's like. This is the movie about the Washington Post because the New York Times didn't have to go to Ben Bradley's living room to like publish this. Like, you know, they had the whole newsroom behind them and it wasn't this sort of guerrilla effort that they have going on here. And I really like that. I don't like, I think the only things I don't really like about this movie are the beginning and the end. Like, I think the beginning, while it may be good in sort of like a vacuum, it doesn't really serve the movie as well as it hurts it, in my opinion. And then I think the end is really bungled, in my opinion. Like,
Yeah.
with the Watergate scene.
That and just like they started to have like a nice scene going where it was like Kay walking through like the printing press.
Yep.
And like that was kind of like nice just to like, you know, this love for newspapers and showing like all the moving parts of the printing press.
Right.
But then just like that pull out and the bad ADR of like Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks walking away, and they're just kind of like buddies, and everything is good and happy at that point. So like that would be a bad place to end. That's a bad place to end our portion of the story, and then it's even worse when you add on the like what is the hotel? The
Watergate.
The Watergate, yeah. That whole
And like Nixon's phone call.
like we've seen everything that they show in that besides Nixon's phone call, but like we've seen in movie form, like in Forrest Gump, they show the exact shots that we get in this of like looking across and seeing the flashlights going around the Watergate Hotel. Like there's nothing that's new about that. And it also just had this feeling of being like, get ready next summer for the Post too. Watergate.
I felt like they
this
were gonna
time
put
it's
up-
Mm-hmm.
personal.
It felt like a Marvel
Like,
kind of
to
post
be
credit scene. Yes.
continued.
Yeah.
It didn't fit with this at all. It like broke the tone of the movie. Like, and I felt pretty good about the movie. And then that sort of weak ending happened, and I was like, all right, that's kind of weak, but that's whatever. But then to follow it up with that, it's like, did you not trust the strength of what you just told that you had to be like, yeah, in case you didn't get it, Watergate is going to happen next, and it wouldn't have happened unless the Post decided to publish the story.
But it really is this kind of just like, yeah, it is like them walking through their whatever ending. Could have written a better ending. And then just kind of like it felt like the end of one of like the Nolan like Batman movies where like the score starts to ramp up as we get like as we get that scene of the kind of Nixon or whatever talking. He's like, it's gonna never happen again. Like,
It was also like it was the same thing as the beginning where it was like in a vacuum. That's a kind of a cool, well shot scene, but it just makes me want make an actual Watergate movie. Don't make the movie about this then. Like if the stakes are higher in that where like the score is like actually like increasing and that's what we're gonna go out on, then make the Watergate movie. Don't make the Pentagon Papers movie.
I hate when movies just like, remember? What water? Do you remember? Watergate, remember?
History Easter egg.
Yeah. I do like how they handled Nixon outside of that one scene. I mean, even that's great. It felt like what's the George Clooney directed the Good Night and Good Luck, where they have the what did they have? They have like McCarthy like old footage of him, don't they, or something in that movie?
It's been a while since I've seen that.
They do something similar to that, but I do like that choice because when you have somebody like Nixon or McCarthy, like the performance can be taken like it can be over the top. It can be Watchmen kind of, you know, and people can be like, well, he wasn't really like that. That's like the actor, but like by
not showing his face
or by just using like that was like real life like archival audio clips with an actor casted to play him like shot from behind him, kind of shot over the shoulder. And I think those scenes were like, that's a powerful choice.
And to shoot it like it's someone watching from the bushes, like while
Right,
this is
yeah.
happening.
I liked that.
Which like that probably didn't happen, but it you get the idea of like, oh, this is a conversation we probably shouldn't be privy to, and we're supposed to be careful about listening to.
Yeah, exactly. Which made me kind of further dislike Darkest Hour, because they try to do a scene like that with audio that's not actually a real life archive audio clip.
Interestingly, I think the guy who plays Roosevelt in Darkest Hour is the guy who plays what's his face and David Strathairn.
What's his
I don't know,
face?
what's his face? I don't know how to pronounce his name. David Strathairn, the lead guy in Good Night and Good Luck.
Oh, okay.
That's the guy who plays Roosevelt on the phone in Darkest Hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. I didn't know that.
Unless
I
I'm
didn't pick
wrong
up
and
on
I'm
that.
completely crossing my wires, but I remember
I'm just
looking
totally,
it up.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty. I mean, yeah, I came out of this movie just kind of being like, you know, like, oh, I like that, because anything Steven Spielberg makes, again, there's so many just masterfully, like, or maybe even not masterfully, and maybe I just get nostalgia of just kind of like that whole like storyline of the intern or the junior or whatever, like running to the Times office and almost gets like hit by a car, like crossing the street or whatever. There's just like, that's like a weird scene to point out, but there's just so much like Spielberg-ism like in that scene. It just, it feels like so many other movies he's made. I don't know. I don't want to discredit this movie too much, because there is a lot that I do like. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just like overall I also don't like how very uninterested in like what the actual Pentagon Papers are, like that this film takes. I don't know. There's again. This is such a small story and that's part of such a larger story, and I don't know how I would have approached this. It's very important material and it's very important history, but like I just don't like, even if Steven Spielberg can't like pull it off, you know, like I don't know who could really, you know. Yeah.
You guys ready to get into some ratings?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Well, I just had one last
Yeah, go
thing to
for it.
bring
Go
up
ahead.
that I was wondering if you guys noticed this. So I feel like there is that underlying message of the movie, like men didn't take Kay Graham seriously. She deserved to be taken seriously. It was a time of sexism and whatnot. And then in that last scene one of the last scenes where they're announcing the Supreme Court vote, and everyone's focusing on that one woman journalist, and she's about to announce it, and some other guy just runs out and yells what the results were, like, over her.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It just struck me as funny, because, like, where did he even come from?
That was funny.
She's like, 6-3, and she's like getting the information, and he's just like, we won, and like totally steals the
Steals her
entire
thunder, yeah.
moment.
She was
from
really
her.
good in this too, Carrie Coon, in that role.
I don't know why. I just started cracking up at that scene, and I'm like, you bastard. She was about to
you
say
know what?
it.
You know what scene
She
I
felt a
really
little
didn't like
underdeveloped,
that
yeah.
I'm just remembering now, when like Kay Graham shows up to the Supreme Court, and then she meets with like the female person from the opposition.
Oh, yeah.
And that was it was too, like, again, that was too on the nose. Like, we got it. Like, we got the point that like this is a movie about, like, you know,
Women are treated terribly. We know.
well, not even that. Like, it was trying to build up Kay Graham too much in the movie, where it's like we could have done that in our heads and in our own interpretation of this movie without needing you to insert this like side character for the opposition who's like, oh, I'm not supposed to be on your side, but I look up to you and you're a very important person and I love you. Like, it's just too much.
Can we do a selfie?
And when she walks out, I don't know if you noticed, but all the people lined up staring at her like in admiration are
there's
women.
all the women.
I did like that though, because that's
I don't-
unspoken,
yeah.
and that's like that's
Okay.
you know, you can insert those details without
That's
having to
fine.
make a whole scene that's like, here's what I'm trying to get across with this movie. It was
It's like, you're going to inspire other women.
yeah,
Speak
like
up.
I did like when she was walking out, and it's all these women who are like kind of staring at her as she walks down, and they know how important it is at the time, even if men didn't fully understand at that time.
Yeah.
But let me read this Rotten Tomatoes, and then we'll get into some ratings.
Oh, great.
On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 88% based on 269 reviews with an average rating of 8 out of 10. The site's critical consensus reads, the post's period setting belies its bitingly timely themes, brought compellingly to life by director Steve Spielberg.
You on a first name basis? What do you say? Hey, Steve. It's pretty good.
Steve S. And an outstanding ensemble cast. Any volunteers to take the initial?
I'll go. I think I've really laid everything out on the table. I think I literally even said at some point, like a few minutes ago, I was like, I'm pretty tapped out on this movie. Yeah, no, I think I've said everything I needed to say. Again, Steven Spielberg movie. It's great. It's masterfully made at parts. There's a lot of really great performances. Again, story feels kind of thin. I think this is again, it's just a complicated story to tell. I don't know how I would have told it better, but it doesn't work for me. I guess we bring those two like positives and the negative together, and I would come to like 3.5 fingers for this movie. It's not exactly in my top 10 list, but it deserves to be up for Best Picture. I think, even if the Academy and I are biased toward Steven Spielberg and a lot of the cast. So yeah, that's where I'm going to leave us off on 3.5 fingers.
Yes, I would sort of agree in terms of like, I think we maybe bashed this film in this review a little bit more, and I feel like that's me. Like, you know how like teachers, like, you know, oh, do you
what
know?
about us, Mike?
Oh God,
What about teachers?
They're just the worst.
when you know a student is capable of more, when you know that a student is one of the more gifted students in your class,
yeah.
Right.
you give them a different criticism than you do to the kids that like struggle to turn in their
100%.
homework. Yeah,
I'm
Where you're
disappointed
like-
in you, Steve.
And
like,
that goes for like everything too, like behavior wise,
yeah.
academic wise.
Like I know that Steven Spielberg is capable of better, even though this is still better than most movies that are out today. And like, there's not a whole lot that I can like really drag about this movie. Like, there's nothing that I really hated, with the exception of that scene in the courtroom. That I did honestly hate that scene. I cringed at it. But like, even as much as I like dragged the first like 15 minutes of this movie, like, it's still Steven Spielberg doing Vietnam, and half of my complaint is I just want a full Vietnam movie from Steven Spielberg. Like,
Right.
Don't tease me with this and then give me a paper movie. Like, I want another Saving Private Ryan movie from Steven Spielberg. But there's so many great scenes in this movie, and even if they aren't magical in the way that I'm used to from Steven Spielberg, where you think in terms of movie magic and like these big grand sets and just incredible cinematic moments, I think I maybe shift more of the praise towards the script, because I think there's a lot of great dialogue in this movie, and I point to and the acting and the scene at breakfast with Kay Graham and Ben Bradley, and then that other scene with Ben talking about his relationship with the Kennedys and Jackie Kennedy, and they kind of get emotional there. And just like the Supreme Court scene, there's a lot of other scenes that feel really great from the script angle, and they just maybe didn't come across as well as I wanted them to from Steven Spielberg. But it's an important topic, maybe just too on the nose and just not as magical as I wanted it to be. But it's still a fucking great movie. So I'm going to give it 4 fingers. I think it's well deserved as an Oscar nominee. It's one of the best pictures of the year. It's not a handy nominee.
Yeah.
But it was close. It was
Yeah.
on the bubble.
No, yeah.
So yeah, 4 fingers for me.
All right. So I would agree that it was a good movie. It was well done. It kept my attention the whole time. Because sometimes with like a historical film, even though I'm a history teacher and enjoy these topics, sometimes they still can get a little dry and
yeah.
like you're kind of zoning out sometimes. And I was worried that might happen in this movie, but I really enjoyed the whole thing. Even though we knew how it was going to end, it was interesting to see like how they actually got to that point and the decision process in publishing the story. So I would also give it a 4. For me, like you guys obviously look more into the deeper parts of a film, like cinematography and things of that nature. For me, I just kind of judge movies on, did I enjoy them? Did I pay attention the entire time? And it's not a movie I necessarily would want to see it. Like, I wouldn't need to see it again.
Right.
So I wouldn't give it a 5, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. Obviously, the acting was good. And unfortunately, it is still a relevant story.
Right,
So it definitely left you, like, thinking. The one thing that really resonated with me from the film, which is the historical part of how often our politicians will use the American people as pawns in their own agenda. Just the idea of like Kay Graham, like one part I forgot to mention, her realizing like, I sent my son there, like to her friend. Like,
That was really well
I
acted
think that
scene, too.
almost is what, like, that had a role maybe in convincing her, like, yeah, we're friends, but you let my son leave for Vietnam knowing that we
Right.
couldn't win. Like, I could have lost my child, and you, like, waved him goodbye with me, knowing that you were all lying to the American people. We weren't going to win that war. It was almost pointless at that stage. So I thought that was a really like poignant scene, and it's scary because it shows that our politicians, like, they say one thing, but most of them do use us in their like political game. And so the movie stuck with me like for a while after. Like, I left the theater and Ryan and I were like talking about it the entire way home, of just like more like the historical points that it makes about like politics in general.
Right.
So I think it was an enjoyable film, but then it also made you think, and that's what most films are supposed to do. So I would give it a 4.
Very cool.
Yeah, I do kind of like how, like, I think it's too on the nose with the like publishing aspect and the like president versus the media, but I do like the parallels between like Vietnam and kind of the war in the Middle East that we're engaged in now. Like, I really like the point where they're kind of like, the whole point of the Pentagon Papers is that they knew the war was failing. They knew that we were sacrificing American lives, but nobody wanted to be the one that was like, we give up. Like, it's not working in Vietnam. We need to pull out. Like, nobody
Right.
wanted to sacrifice that political capital, even if it meant saving American lives. And I feel like that has a lot of parallels to the war in the Middle East, but it's not as on the nose as like the president versus the media. And like, there's stuff that like Nixon says where you're like, Trump says this.
Yeah.
Like, this
Yeah.
and maybe that's coincidental, and maybe that's just unfortunate how similar Trump is to Nixon in many ways. But it comes across that way.
But then 40 years later, it also is like, okay, great, we all got behind the story. We're like, yeah, the Post won, they published the story, but whatever really changed because of it? So that part too was like, good story, but it wasn't as inspirational as it like should have been, because here we are.
Right. Yeah.
Not to be a downer.
We're all doomed.
The world is still terrible.
Something I forgot to mention when you were talking about, like, it's kind of like goofy that we got like emotional. Like, it's like, we're gonna print it, you know? Like, it's just, I did come home and just feeling like emotional. I was trying to explain to Sabri, I was like, just fucking newspaper dramas. Like, I don't know what it is about them, but like, they just get me like riled up, kind of, or just like, again, Spotlight. I can't recommend it enough. It was one of my favorite movies of that year. When did that come out?
2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's something
It's
about
a great
fighting
movie.
for the
Yeah.
truth that is
Yeah.
inspirational if you're a half decent human being. So
Yeah.
I think that's why the newspaper, because it's never like they're fighting to publish bullshit. Like, they're always, it's like the truth.
Publish this listicle about which Harry Potter character are you? I could lose my job.
A nice companion piece, I feel like, to this was a documentary that came out this year too. It's called Nobody Speak. I think it's on Netflix. I forget. but it goes into, I think it was heavily advertised as kind of like the Hulk Hogan kind of like, because he had a sex tape that was released, and it was like him having sex with his best friend's wife, which is its own kind of like a loaded thing. But then
Why are you gonna tape that though?
Hulk Hogan loves that shit. So then Gawker, I mean, we kind of know the story, but Gawker gets their hands on this, and they just fucking like put it on the internet. And Hulk Hogan's like, whoa, that's not fucking right. And then we go down this kind of like twisted tunnel of like how this happens and everything. And there's a few other stories that they go into, and it ends with kind of like, should Trump be able to punish? Like, Gawker's not a website anymore. That's how terribly that court case went.
Wow.
Hulk Hogan took them for everything they had and then some. And it turns out...
Well, because that's not news reporting. That's a violation of somebody's privacy.
That's an extreme. But, yeah, no, I mean, it is. That's kind of a very dark gray area, basically, is what they're doing. But I mean, you could kind of say the same about like the Pentagon paper. I don't know. It's hard, and they go into a lot of different examples. And like, whoa, how did Hulk Hogan like afford like this like top lawyer team kind of too? And it's like, oh, it's somebody that doesn't like Gawker. It's a politician that they were like, hey, is this guy secretly gay? Because he is. And then he's like, Hulk Hogan, fucking take him down, man. Here's $2 million for your law team, and they take him down. And then at the end, it's kind of like where they just play like tons of like clips of Trump's being like, soon as I'm president, I'm gonna sue the shit out of like this paper or whatever. And it's kind of like, where do we draw the line? This needs to be a conversation. Yeah. It's a really great documentary. It's called Nobody Speak, and it came out this year.
I mean, I guess the point would be like if you publish the P tapes, that's probably going too far.
Right.
Because it is a violation, but it's not a violation to report that P tapes exist.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Because that's where they went too far with Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, like report
hey, come here and watch
exists.
porn on our website.
Yeah.
Right. I don't even know if it was exactly porn, but I mean, they had stills from it. And it's just, I don't know, maybe they did post it. I don't really know what...
Because Hulk Hogan's case is probably not as strong if they're just like, hey, Hulk Hogan slept with his best friend's wife and we have proof. We can't post it. But
Right. Definitely.
I think the story is fine and they should be able to post that if it happened. Like, the truth is the truth. Like, there's a quote out there. It's like, if it can be destroyed by the truth, then it deserves to be destroyed by the truth. Like, if that's what happened, then that's what happened. But... like, I think posting, like, naked pictures of people or video, like, that is a violation of somebody's, like, overall well-being.
Definitely.
And it's
Ken
not
Bone.
like... And it's not... Yeah, we're talking to you, Ken. But it's not like the America didn't depend on, like, well, now we know Hulk Hogan fucked his best friend's wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the Pentagon Papers, like, that was something that people need to know. So there's a difference there, but it is hard to say, like, you don't want to take away the freedom of the press because they're supposed to be the ones who are able to check everybody. And Trump would obviously get rid of tons of these people if he could. So it does bring up that issue of, like, what's going too far and what's not. But I think when you're posting, like, naked, like, that's not right.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, definitely.
Talk about it, but...
I mean, there's just, like, any good documentary where it's kind of... I don't know, I get a little bored of documentaries that are just kind of like, this is 100% right. Like, I'm sorry, and this is fucking wrong. What's happening here? It's kind of like, well, that's not really compelling. It's kind of like, well, like, Gawker was this, like, kind of odd man out, very salacious kind of blog. A lot of stuff that they published
like TMZ-ish?
were sort of, but they were like very intelligent about a lot of the stuff that they did.
They were woke on certain stuff,
right?
But they would also, would post stuff like that.
Yeah, it was just they were an odd bird of publishing. They're popular, and obviously they still have their other kind of sister sites that were maybe absorbed by other companies or whatever out there, like I don't know, the video game one and They owned a whole slew of them that didn't get taken down with this, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like I was saying, there's a lot of different details. They're all kind of floating, and it was just kind of like this. It was just, this is important, And who, like, is anybody going to use this court case to further their argument that, like, hey, that wasn't really nice what you wrote about President Trump. Like, we're going to take you for everything you have now. And it's just, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's obviously not as serious as what's happening in the Post. But, yeah.
Anyway, all those ratings are going to come out to 3.83 repeating, which will round down to 3.5 fingers for the Post. A respectable score. We have anything else we want to say before we get out of here?
I don't.
Last plugs, thedailystruggle.com.
Yeah, check out thedailystruggle.com. Check out my weird Snap video about Paul's mom.
Check out Paul's mom.
My mom keeps texting me like, did you put it on the YouTube yet? And I'm like, I don't think it'll do well there, but maybe. And if anyone from Snapchat is listening, please bring back that filter. I have more material saved in my phone that I'd like to use. And that's about it for me. Don't think. Oh, and I just want to say that I have a really comfortable T-shirt from How Many Fingers, the podcast.
Oh, that's so nice of you.
Great color, really unique shade of blue, very comfy, great for sleeping, going to the gym. I highly recommend.
Thanks, Lindsay. What's your Venmo account?
I give it 5 fingers.
Man, where can we get those?
And I love drinking beers with my How Many Fingers koozie.
Both available at howmanyfingerspodcast.bigcartel.com. Thanks for that great segue. Let's just
Good merch.
Yes, great merch. Let's run through some links real quick. Again, the handies are going on. You can vote using hashtag #GiveAHandy2 followed by the handy recipient and the category that you're voting for. Go to YouTube, search 2018 Handy Awards nominations. Go to our Facebook, go to our website. We got it all over there. And participate and stay tuned for the ceremony on March 2nd. Voting is open until February 19th. We're on Snapchat now. Add us there at HMF Podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube. HowManyFingersPodcast.com has got pretty much everything else. You got our iTunes link where you can rate us, subscribe to us, review us. Mailing list. Sign up for our mailing list on MailChimp. Link on the website. Merch. We already covered that. Thanks, Lindsay. And our Amazon link and our iTunes link. Click on either of those. Anything you purchase within each respective browser window within the next 24 hours, we'll get a nice cut of that. Really easy way to support the podcast without going too far out of your way.
And I'm a subscriber of the mailing list.
Oh,
it's
yes.
non-intrusive, good mailing list to be on. Mm-hmm. They don't bombard me with emails or anything, but I get my dose of HMF.
I haven't sent an email in a while, actually.
And shout out to the fan base in Nigeria.
Yes.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Loving episode.
We see you, Nigeria. I'm scared. Maybe they're vetting me for something.
We're going to offer you a history teaching job in Nigeria.
We did. We had a very, if you guys want to check out our Loving episode with Lindsay, we had a very big bump with that episode this week from Nigeria specifically. So
well, maybe they're like, hey, she's into interracial relationships.
That could be it. That could be
Hot take. All right. Signing off. Here's the podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Joe.
And I'm the guest. I'm Lindsay, very popular in Nigeria.
I'm huge in Nigeria.
I'm going to start saying that.